Hey horror fans, welcome back to BitBlitz Horror. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into The Heartbreaker's Lament, a Valentine's Day nightmare that'll chill you to the bone. Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Now, let's dim the lights and start our descent into darkness. The Heartbreaker's Lament, a tale of love reborn. I never thought I'd find myself dreading February 14th. It used to be a day of excitement, of hope, of love in the air. But that was before I encountered the entity that would forever change my perception of Valentine's Day, and of love itself. It started 3 years ago. I was walking home from work, my mind filled with plans for a romantic evening with my girlfriend, Elena. We had been together for 2 years, and I was finally ready to take the next step. The small velvet box in my pocket felt heavy with promise. The streets were adorned with pink and red decorations, storefronts displaying heart-shaped chocolates and plush teddy bears. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh flowers from nearby florists. As I turned the corner onto my street, I saw it for the first time. At first glance, it appeared to be a person, tall, slender, dressed in flowing black robes that seemed to absorb the light around them. But as I drew closer, I realized this was no ordinary being. Its face was a void, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to pull at my very soul. Where eyes should have been, there were only deep, empty sockets that glowed with an eerie, pulsating red light. Its mouth was a jagged tear across its face, lined with razor-sharp teeth that gleamed in the fading daylight. But it wasn't its appearance that truly terrified me. It was the overwhelming wave of despair that washed over me the moment our gazes met. In an instant, all the joy and love I had been feeling moments before vanished, replaced by a crushing sense of loneliness and hopelessness. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as tears began to stream down my face. The creature tilted its head, observing me with what I can only describe as cruel curiosity. Then, without warning, it vanished into thin air, leaving me trembling on the sidewalk. That night, I couldn't bring myself to meet Elena. I called her, making up an excuse about feeling ill. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the image of that terrible entity from my mind. The engagement ring sat untouched on my nightstand, a painful reminder of the happiness that now felt so far out of reach. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, reports began to surface of a strange phenomenon sweeping through the city. People were falling into deep depression seemingly overnight. Suicide rates skyrocketed. Relationships crumbled as partners suddenly lost all feelings of affection for one another. I knew in my gut that the creature I had seen was responsible. I started calling it the Heartbreaker in my mind, a fitting name for a being that seemed intent on destroying love and happiness wherever it went. As Valentine's Day approached, the situation grew dire. The streets, once bustling with life and laughter, became eerily quiet. People hurried from place to place with their heads down, avoiding eye contact. The festive decorations that had adorned the city now seemed like a cruel joke, a reminder of the joy that had been stolen from us all. I tried to warn people, to tell them about the Heartbreaker, but no one would listen. Those who hadn't seen it themselves dismissed my ravings as the delusions of a madman. Those who had seen it were too far gone in their despair to care. My own life fell apart. Elena left me, unable to understand the change that had come over me. She said I had become distant, cold, that the spark between us had died. I wanted to explain, to tell her about the monster that had stolen our love, but the words caught in my throat. How could I make her understand something I barely comprehended myself? I lost my job soon after. My performance had been slipping, my mind constantly preoccupied with thoughts of the Heartbreaker. My boss called me into his office one day, his face a mask of concern and frustration. "I don't know what's going on with you," he said, "but you're not the same person we hired. We're going to have to let you go. My friends drifted away one by one, put off by my obsessive talk about the creature and my increasingly erratic behavior. I couldn't blame them. I knew how I sounded: paranoid, delusional, lost in a world of my own making. But through it all, a small part of me clung to hope that there must be a way to stop this monster. I spent countless hours researching, poring over ancient texts and obscure folklore, searching for any information about creatures that fed on emotions. I scoured the darkest corners of the internet, joining forums and chat rooms dedicated to the paranormal and supernatural. I learned about empathic vampires, beings that could drain emotions from their victims. I read accounts of shadow people, entities that brought fear and despair in their wake. But nothing quite matched the Heartbreaker. It seemed to be something unique, a creature born from the collective pain of broken hearts. As another Valentine's Day approached, I felt no closer to finding a solution. The city had become a shadow of its former self. Parks that had once been filled with couples now stood empty. Restaurants that had been booked solid for romantic dinners in previous years were shutting down, unable to stay afloat in a world where love seemed to have died. I found myself wandering the streets more and more, searching for any sign of the Heartbreaker. Sometimes I thought I caught glimpses of it, a flicker of movement in a dark alley, a shadow that seemed too deep to be natural. But it always vanished before I could get a closer look. On the morning of February 13th, I woke with a sense of dread weighing heavily on my chest. Tomorrow would mark 3 years since I first encountered the Heartbreaker. 3 years of watching it slowly drain the life and love from my city. I spent the day wandering the streets, my eyes peeled for any sign of the creature. As night fell, I found myself in a deserted park, sitting on a bench where couples had once come to steal kisses and whisper sweet nothings. That's when I saw it again. The Heartbreaker materialized at the edge of the park, its robes billowing in a non-existent wind. I felt the familiar wave of despair wash over me, but this time, I was prepared. I had spent 3 years building up my mental defenses, steeling myself against its influence. I stood, my fists clenched at my sides, and faced the monster that had ruined so many lives. "Why?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty park. "Why are you doing this?" To my surprise, the creature responded. Its voice was like nails on a chalkboard, sending shivers down my spine. "Because love is a lie," it hissed. "A fleeting illusion that only leads to pain and betrayal. I am freeing them from that pain." I shook my head, anger rising within me. "You're wrong. Love is what gives life meaning. It's what makes us human." The Heartbreaker laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. "And what has love given you, human?" "Nothing but sorrow and loneliness." Its words stung, but I refused to let them break me. "Maybe," I admitted. "But that's the risk we take. The pain of love lost is worth the joy of love found." For a moment, I thought I saw the creature hesitate. Its swirling void of a face seemed to flicker, revealing something almost human underneath. That's when I realized the Heartbreaker wasn't some all-powerful, emotionless being. It was hurting too. Somewhere in its twisted existence, it had experienced the pain of heartbreak and decided to protect itself by destroying love altogether. In that moment of realization, I did something that surprised even myself. I stepped forward and embraced the Heartbreaker. The sensation was indescribable. It was like plunging into an icy lake, every cell in my body screaming in protest. The creature's aura of despair threatened to overwhelm me, but I held on, focusing on every happy memory, every moment of love I had ever experienced. I thought of Elena, of the joy we had shared before the Heartbreaker tore us apart. I remembered our first date, how nervous I had been, how her laugh had put me at ease. I recalled lazy Sunday mornings spent cuddled in bed, the way her eyes lit up when she smiled, the feeling of her hand in mine. I thought of my parents, of the love they had shown me throughout my life. I remembered my mother's comforting hugs when I was sick, my father's proud smile at my graduation. I recalled family dinners filled with laughter and warmth, the unconditional support they had always given me. I thought of my friends, of the bonds we had forged over years of shared experiences. I remembered late-night conversations about our hopes and dreams, the way they had stood by me through good times and bad. I recalled inside jokes that could send us into fits of laughter with just a word or a look. All these memories, all these moments of love in its many forms, I poured into my embrace of the Heartbreaker. I felt the creature stiffen in my arms, then begin to tremble. A keening wail erupted from its jagged mouth, a sound of such profound sorrow that it brought tears to my eyes. Slowly, ever so slowly, I felt the creature begin to change. Its robes melted away, revealing a form that was almost human. The void of its face solidified into features twisted with grief and loneliness. As I held it, I whispered words of comfort and understanding. I told it about the beauty of love, the way it can heal even the deepest wounds. I spoke of forgiveness, of second chances, of the courage it takes to open one's heart again after being hurt. Love isn't just about romance, I murmured. It's about connection, about finding meaning in our relationships with others. It's in the smile of a stranger on a bad day, in the loyalty of a friend who stands by you when everyone else has left. It's in the gentle touch of a parent, in the wagging tail of a dog greeting you at the door. I felt the creature's form shift in my arms, becoming more solid, more human. But it hurts, it whispered, its voice no longer the harsh screech it had been before, but something softer, vulnerable. Yes, I agreed. Sometimes it hurts more than we think we can bear. But that pain is proof that what we felt was real, that it mattered. And it's that same capacity for feeling that allows us to experience joy, to find beauty in the world around us. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time seemed to lose all meaning in that surreal embrace. But gradually, I felt the oppressive aura of despair begin to lift. When I finally stepped back, the being before me was unrecognizable from the monster I had first encountered 3 years ago. It looked human, vulnerable, lost. "I'm sorry," it whispered, its voice now soft and filled with remorse. "I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting everyone from pain." I nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief wash over me. "Pain is part of love," I said gently. "But it's not the whole story. There's so much more: joy, comfort, growth. You can't have one without risking the other." As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, I watched the former Heartbreaker take its first tentative steps into a world it had only known through the lens of despair. It turned back to me one last time, a small, hesitant smile on its face. "Thank you," it said simply, before walking away into the brightening day. In the weeks that followed, the city began to heal. The cloud of depression that had hung over us for so long slowly lifted. People started to smile again, to laugh, to fall in love. I noticed the change first in small ways. The barista at my local coffee shop, who had been sullen and withdrawn for months, suddenly started greeting customers with a genuine smile. The elderly couple in my apartment building, who had stopped speaking to each other, were seen holding hands in the elevator. As word spread about the lifting of the Valentine's Day curse, as people had taken to calling it, the city seemed to come alive again. Parks that had been empty for years were once again filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. Restaurants reopened, their tables filled with couples gazing into each other's eyes over candlelit dinners. The change wasn't just in romantic relationships. I saw families reuniting, friendships being rekindled. People seemed more open, more willing to connect with those around them. It was as if the entire city had been reminded of the importance of love in all its forms. For me, the healing process was slower. The scars left by 3 years of battling the Heartbreaker didn't fade overnight. But gradually, I felt myself opening up again. I reached out to old friends, rebuilding bridges I had thought were permanently burned. I even managed to reconnect with Elena. While we didn't rekindle our romantic relationship, we were able to forge a new friendship, one built on mutual understanding and respect. I found a new job, one that allowed me to help others who were struggling with emotional issues. My experiences with the Heartbreaker had given me a unique perspective on pain and healing, and I found that I could use that knowledge to make a real difference in people's lives. As for the being once known as the Heartbreaker, I never saw it again. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I thought I could feel its presence, not as the oppressive force it had once been, but as a gentle reminder of the importance of empathy and understanding. As another Valentine's Day approached, I found myself looking forward to the holiday for the first time in years. Not because I had found new love, that would come in time, but because I had rediscovered hope. Hope in the resilience of the human heart, in our capacity for forgiveness and growth. The night before Valentine's Day, I took a walk through the same park where I had confronted the Heartbreaker a year ago. The difference was striking. Where once there had been only emptiness and despair, now the park was alive with activity. Couples strolled hand in hand, families played together on the grass, friends gathered in groups, their laughter carrying on the cool evening air. As I watched, I saw a young man nervously approach his partner, a small box clutched in his hand. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw the look of joy on his partner's face, saw them embrace as nearby onlookers applauded. The scene brought tears to my eyes, but for the first time in years, they were tears of joy. I thought about the journey I had been on, the darkness I had faced, and the light I had found on the other side. I thought about the Heartbreaker, and how even a being born of pain and loneliness could learn to understand love. And somewhere out there, I like to think that the being once known as the Heartbreaker is learning to love too, discovering the beautiful risk that comes with opening one's heart to another. In the end, that's what love is, a leap of faith, a willingness to be vulnerable, to risk pain for the chance at something truly beautiful. It's not always easy, and it's certainly not always happy, but it's what makes life worth living. So this Valentine's Day, as I watch couples walk hand in hand and see the city once again decorated in shades of pink and red, I smile. Because I know now, more than ever, that love is worth fighting for. Even in the darkest of times, even against the most formidable of foes, love will always find a way to prevail. And that, I think, is the greatest victory of all. As I made my way home that night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The weight I had been carrying for so long had finally lifted. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would still be moments of pain and doubt, but I also knew that I was ready to face whatever came my way, armed with the knowledge that love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force in the universe. I thought about all the people in the city who were preparing to celebrate Valentine's Day, many of them for the first time in years. I thought about the new couples, nervous and excited about their first Valentine's Day together. I thought about longtime partners, rediscovering the spark that had brought them together in the first place. I thought about friends and families, using the day as an excuse to show their appreciation for one another. And I thought about those who might be spending the day alone, reminding myself that solitude didn't have to mean loneliness. Self-love, I realized, was just as important as any other kind of love. As I reached my apartment, I paused at the door, looking up at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were celebrating the return of love to our city. Happy Valentine's Day, I whispered to the universe, to the Heartbreaker, to everyone who had been part of this incredible journey. Then I stepped inside, ready to face whatever the future might bring, knowing that as long as there was love in the world, there was always hope.